thank you so much to NASScom for giving me the opportunity to convey Forrester's trends in enterprise AI. I am Mike Gualtieri, and I am a VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester, and I spend every week, every working day, basically talking to enterprises about how they're adopting AI, the use cases, but I also have the privilege of talking to the vendors who are creating this technology as well. So what I want to do is share with you some select trends, given the time that we have, and how we're seeing adoption of AI in enterprises play out. This started to become a hot topic about 2016, and I think it was kind of an offshoot of a couple of things, including big data. Well, what do we do with that big data? We do machine learning, we do AI. But there's also the business backdrop, and the way I translate what I hear from enterprises, what they're really being successful with AI, is about decisions. And really, an enterprise's success is the collective efficacy of all those decisions. Now, some of those decisions are made by the leaders of the company. Some are made by the employees. Am I pressing the forward button? Yes. OK, sorry. I'm a little confused by the screen here. But mostly, and increasingly, by decision intelligence that's embedded in the application. So that is the big use case. Now, we'll talk about generative AI as well. But this is the big use case. So if you just had to categorize one use case, it's this decision intelligence. And this is why companies are doing AI. And it's definitely gone from experimentation to business-worthy use cases. My conversations, even a couple years ago, were mostly about, well, what are the use cases and how feasible is it to do this? Now almost all of the conversations are about how do we do more? They've implemented a use case. That use case has been successful. How do we do more faster? And we've also been tracking since 2014 the adoption of AI by large enterprise. These are the world's largest enterprise. Now, we don't define it. It's a standard question like, to what extent are you using AI at your organization? So I think in 2016, it was like the low 40%. And you can see the jumps in the last couple of years. And I mean, this has now become a fundamental technology. This isn't like the 90s when companies were deciding, oh, do you think I really need a website or not? I'm not sure. We've passed that on AI. Everyone's going to implement it. And the reason for that is because of this other information, is that companies who are implementing it are being successful with it. Now, I hear sometimes a narrative that says a lot of companies are failing with AI. I'm not talking to those. I'm talking to the successful ones, and we must be surveying the successful ones. I think that's a bit of a false narrative. So companies are being successful with this, and it's extremely common for these use cases to be very, very consequential, even with an itsy-bitsy little machine learning model that just predicts one tiny little thing. So this is in supply chain. This is in marketing use cases, recommendation engines, anywhere there's a prediction that can enhance a decision that's being made. So I am sure that you have clients or you have stories of all of these use cases. And that's why AI is no longer this experimental data science thing, but it is a strategic imperative. And like probably every other session here, and especially the last session, yes, I mean, every enterprise is going to do this one way or the other. Now, the other piece of data we have, we do a spend forecast as well. Well, how are enterprises going to spend on AI software? And you can see here that the growth rate is going to be significantly higher for AI spend than for software in general. So this is a growth area, and that's why that's one of the reasons why we're all here. What are those growth areas? How are we taking advantage of this? Most of that software spend is coming from the US and China, but it's going to grow across the world. You may be looking at these numbers and you may be saying, oh, that's 62 billion. I've heard it's 172 billion. Well, we feel that our forecast is better than anyone else's because we're not counting the software in a Tesla car. right? That's a car. That's get counted as a car. We're talking about software that is AI. So anyway, you can access that report on the Forrester site. So enterprises are moving forward, but they're moving forward much faster than I think anyone expects, because as one industry player gets a successful use case, the other players in that industry fall like dominoes. So with that as the backdrop, let's look at a few trends here. The first one is the build versus buy AI. Look, we've heard everything about, well, you need to hire data scientists, and you need to implement those use cases. Yes, but every ISV, every business software vendor, is now needing to build AI, various AI capabilities into their software. So now enterprises are saying, well, do I really need to hire 100 data scientists to do this use case? Or do I talk to my vendor? Is it on their roadmap to implement this feature? So now we have this whole balance that's being created with building use cases. They still will have to build use cases, and many of you are going to help them build those use cases. But they're also increasingly going to buy the capabilities in their existing upgrade to the next version of their accounting software, for example. And companies now are adopting, maybe a half dozen, maybe a dozen use cases. Yes, there's some that have hundreds of use cases. There's complete companies built on AI. But for most foundational enterprises, it's just a handful of use cases. But guess what? There's thousands. Every single business process you can walk through and whiteboard, and you can find multiple use cases. They may not all work because you have to have the data, and there's a lot of other factors there, but there's a ton of use cases here. So there's a lot of running room. And the business software vendors they see that in their software as well, and so they're building those capabilities. So there's going to be a lot more balance in the build versus buy equation. And we estimate that solution accelerators will give enterprises a significant advantage. This is different, though, in AI, because much of these capabilities have to be trained on their data. So it's not necessarily just buying the next version and having AI in it. Sometimes it will be. But sometimes there's going to be a process that initially trains that data and retrains it. So there's going to be a lot of work necessary for that. The second big trend is investing in AI platforms. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper on this one because it's a big shift in what I've seen in the last 2 years. Most conversations about artificial intelligence and artificial intelligence technology, machine learning, have been about data science. But there's been a big shift that to deliver the models that get created by data scientists, they have to be manifested within business process applications, right? So there has to be an intersection between the machine learning lifecycle and the traditional SDLC. And many enterprises, and probably all of you are experts, certainly in the SDLC and many in data science as well. But these have to come together. Now, what is the shift? The shift is that the buyers of this technology with the end enterprise have changed. It's not the data science teams that are saying, I need this, that, or the other thing. It's now, because it's strategic, now you have the office of the CTO, the CIO, solution architects, enterprise architects, experts in delivering software solutions, now are looking at these platforms and how they can be applied across the entire enterprise. And this trend was so big that we published a report that you see here on this. And the evolution of this has been, go back to 1973 with SAS Institute out of Cary, North Carolina, SAS, SPSS. These type of platforms were analytics platforms, and they've evolved. But the difference between a machine learning platform and an AI platform is that a machine learning platform outputs a model. An AI platform outputs a solution, an application, or at least an application component. So these are the essential characteristics of the platform. I wish I could talk to you about the platform for an hour, because things like AutoML and ML Ops. There's a lot of capabilities in these platforms that are really making data science teams and extended AI teams a whole lot more productive. Not the least of which is these industry solutions. So if you think, if you talk to your data scientists and they say, oh, I'm using a Jupyter notebook and I'm writing code in Python and R, that's fine. There's nothing wrong. You still have to do that. But that's a very narrow scope of what it takes to deliver these applications. And these platforms provide productivity on top of that, tremendous productivity on top of that. In the United States, we have contests. I don't know. Do you have contests in India for corn picking in a field? So we have competitions, and the champion farmer can pick 480 ears of corn per hour, which, I don't know, that seems like a lot. Maybe it's not. But with the machine, with this platform, the combine, it's 800,000 ears of corn per hour. That's a very huge difference with one person in this machine. This is what's happening to tools and AI platforms. So the AI platforms are really acting as the productivity tools on top of this base code. And you know what? There's complete parallels to software development. Like if you think about software development back in the 80s or the 90s and how far that's come with platforms and productivity, that's what's happening in AI. So we've estimated through our research and through interviews with teams that an AI team, including the data scientist, can be up to 800% more productive. And more importantly, is a lot of the complexity of data science is being abstracted and hidden away so that for some use cases, not all, business analysts, developers who understand the life cycle but don't understand it completely can also build a lot of these. So at Forrester, one of the things we do, and I do, is I evaluate platforms. I track about 100 of these platforms, but we have an inclusion criteria, and this is our latest report that we, and I'm not going to go through this, but we have criteria that we go through and we evaluate these platforms. All of these platforms are good and providing value, and like I said, there's a lot more that you're not seeing here as well. So the third trend is that the use cases, I call it the more models, the merrier. The use cases are getting a lot more complicated. And that's wonderful because that means a boost in intelligence too. I already said you can have one machine learning model that has a lot of economic value, but more complicated use cases involve more models working together. So I'll just give you an example here. This machine can recognize speech. Now, I don't have one hidden here, but I do want you to hear me say it. This machine can recognize speech. 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 Now, what did I say? I said this machine can recognize speech. And the reason why, so I combined two models. And because I combined two models, we've got a much more complicated solution to something. So this is what's happening. This is another big trend. And you know what one of my favorite, I guess you'd call it a non-AI technology, is constraint programming. Good old-fashioned mathematical optimization. It happens to be tremendously complementary to machine learning in multiple ways. So this is the equation that I think comprises the best AI tech team. Machine learning models, yes. Mathematical models, because we're not going to ignore what we've learned in math and engineering just because maybe we can do it with machine learning. Human rules, knowledge. I mean, the prior session was talking about regulatory and ethics and everything. We can use rules or expert systems. Remember expert systems in the early 80s? That's what AI research was. We can use those to create more complicated and safer artificial intelligence systems. Oh boy, I guess we have to talk about generative AI and ChatGPT. has there been any session at NASScom that hasn't talked about this? You know, at Forrester, we have our internal meetings, and you know, lately we've been saying, okay, we're not going to talk about GPT, and then we always talk about GPT, and it is amazing. I mean, we've been following this for a few years, but now that it's kind of very accessible by the public, I really think that this is an amazing technology. And really, the purest benchmark of AI is something that can mimic or exceed humans. That's what intelligence is, and artificial intelligence. It can mimic or exceed. And I would say that a single machine learning model, like a recommendation engine, for example, at scale, can exceed human intelligence for that narrow scope, right? But when we start to get broader, it gets very interesting. And I don't know how many of you are computer science people out here, but you might remember this gentleman, Marvin Minsky from MIT, and he predicted in 1967 that we would solve this problem within a generation. I mean, even I was like chuckling at this several years ago. No, I'm not so sure. In fact, you see this research paper here was done by some researchers and published. Look at that. Look at these predictions. I mean, that seemed laughable 5 years ago. Like writing a New York Times bestseller, like 25 years from now, like AI will be able to do that. I don't know. Maybe it'll do it next year. I mean, the technology is kind of getting amazing. But just looking at this research, you know, you can see some low estimates there, and you can see some high estimates, and you can see the median. And I put a red line to show you where we are now. This doesn't seem so far-fetched anymore. And look at the full automation of human labor. We'll just all be sitting by the pool, I guess. And of course, OpenAI is the company that's really pushed this. And you know, ChatGPT, which probably most of you have tried, does amazing things, including writing poetry about Elon Musk. That's actually pretty good, right? Write me a poem about Elon Musk that sounds like Dr. Seuss, if you know who Dr. Seuss is. But to build that model, this is the first model, you can see the infrastructure that was needed as well. I mean, that's some serious infrastructure. And these models are going to have to be rebuilt, and they're going to be built. There's not going to be one model. There's going to be tons of models. Okay, so back to what this is actually going to do for us. And you tell I like machines. I like machines. So a lumberjack can fell about 15 trees a day with an axe, but that same lumberjack with a chainsaw can do about 400 per day. So if you think about all the machines that we use, an excavator, a bulldozer, the chainsaw, and everything else, that's all about our muscles, physical, right? So I think generative AI, which I call GAI here, that's going to do for our minds what machines have done for our muscles. So the sequence is complete, people. We've got machines that help us move things and make things, and now we've got machines that will help us think about things, hopefully not bad things. And there's not going to be one universal model. There's going to be multiple models. There's going to be a model that's a lawyer. There's going to be a model that's a researcher, an analyst, a priest, perhaps. There's going to be any generative content you can think of, someone's going to create this model. I can't wait. I can't wait. All the startups who want to talk to me and say, oh, I just created a model on this. You want to hear about it? Yes, I do. I'm very interested in that. So this is what I believe is going to happen with generative AI. And this really is less about the first major mega use case I told you about, which was decisioning. Okay? This is the other side. That was reactive AI. This is generative AI. Now, there's challenges, there's dangers. I'm not going to talk about those because this is a topic that existed with all technology, and I believe the world will help overcome this in some way. Now, because you've all used ChatGPT, what are we recommending to clients? Well, I'm not going to tell you what we're recommending to clients on the ChatGPT. I don't have time, but I am going to talk to you about Turing bots, what we call Turing bots. And Turing bots uses a large language model to generate code, and you probably might all be familiar with this. We actually predicted this, I think it was 2019 when we put the first report out, because we were tracking this. And now there's a ton of products on this as well. We call them Turing bots as a shout out to Alan Turing, the famous computer scientist. And Turing bots develop, ultimately, they generate code. It's a code assist, but ultimately, we believe they will generate entire business process applications given a set of specifications. And if we look at the marketplace right now, I mean, look at the marketplace right now. look at all these Polycoder and Tab9, and you probably all heard of GitHub Copilot. That's a very popular one. And I've talked to companies using this technology, and this is anecdotal. We have to do further studies, but they're saying things like, yeah, some of our developers are saying they can be 70% more productive. So you still need the developers, but there are technologies all around this software development lifecycle. And you know what? Maybe an enterprise should use these because it's safer. It's not going to say something bad. It's not going to say something that's going to offend someone because it's just writing code. So if you think of software development, it's going to change software development. We predict that 10% of all code written this year will be generated from some of these. So anyway, it's very scary as well because this technology is very transformative. But we're still in the loop. In fact, you know how they say humans in the loop? It's actually not humans in the loop. It's AI is in our loop. So we control the loop, and it's AI that's in our loop. So that's generative AI. And then the final trend here is you, because AI cannot deliver itself. It's not just a machine learning model. All of these models, and there's going to be thousands of them, have to manifest themselves in applications. So every business process is going to have to be looked at. And it's not that every business process necessarily has to have a full re-engineering, because you could insert and embed models in existing business processes, but that's going to naturally lead to re-engineering of processes across customer experience and all of this stuff. So there's going to be a significant spend, we think, on developing software that has AI capabilities. The other aspect of this as well is the maintenance of these, okay? Because the maintenance of an AI application is very different from traditional software. Yeah, you have to fix bugs, you have to, add new features and everything. But with AI, you have to retrain models. You have to monitor those models. So it also requires a more complex care and feeding process once it's done, and that's going to boost revenue as well. So that first software forecast I showed you, we've actually been thinking about revising that. So this isn't final, but in light of OpenAI, ChatGPT, we started thinking about revising our estimate for this spend, and we think it's likely to triple what our existing spend is. And when we first did the calculations, it was even higher, and then we said, oh, it can't be that high. So even this might be conservative. So in the next 5 years, we're going to see a tremendous flood of spending in enterprises that need software and services to do this. With that, thank you so much for allowing me to share these enterprise trends. Please feel free to contact me. My contact information is at the Forrester website. everyone is trying to end a presentation. So I did ask ChatGPT how to end this. And it gave me like a real generic thing that was like, oh, you know, soaring, you know, AI and all this sort of transfer. So instead, I asked it to write a poem about NASScom. You know, I should have planned on getting one of you up here to read this poem, but I'm just going to let you all read it, and I will close on this slide. Thank you.
For more interesting content, like, comment, and subscribe to our NASScom YouTube channel.